Hi everyone. I know I haven't been super active on this channel, but I have been working on a bit of a project behind the scenes, and that project has been tracking every single pick of UFC main events since the beginning of 2024. So I have been tracking my own picks, and I have to say I am pretty happy with mine. You can see here, this is the list of predictions that I made. I've also been tracking the odds, such as the winner's odds, and if you correctly choose who wins the fight, you get the amount of money that their odds translate to. But if you incorrectly choose, you lose a unit. So effectively, I am using the odds as a way to normalize for if a fighter is super favorited or not, because then it's not worth a lot to correctly pick that. So you have the win percentage, and then you also have the total amount of units won, which I actually need to put this in. So Imavov was a 120 favorite, I believe. The 120, Mahashev was like a minus 1200 favorite. So extremely extremely heavy favorite over Moicano. So you're not going to make a lot. But if you look at this, it's a 71% win rate for my picks and up 8.1 units. So if you bet a single unit in every single pick that I have given over the course of the last year, then you'd be up 8.1 units, which I think is pretty good. If we take a look at the pay-per-views, I have gone 12-2 in the last year, and actually I haven't factored in the last pay-per-view with Pantoja and Makhachev, so I'd be actually at 14-2, which is also extremely good for pay-per-views. So once again, the reason I'm doing main event picks is because I think that fighters in the main event have the most information about them, and thus they should be the easiest fights to predict because you know the most about the fighters. It's not like you're getting two fighters off of the regional scene. That's why I don't pick every single fight on every single card. We simply don't have enough information to be able to properly pick these fights. So you can take a look at some of the fights that I missed. I missed Moreno versus Royval, Rosenstrike Gaziev, Tuivasa versus Tybura, Nicolau versus Perez, Barboza versus Murphy, Cannonier versus Imavov, Edwards versus Mohammed, Tybura versus Spivak, Cannonier versus Bohalyo, O'Malley, St. Denis, Tyra, and then the last fighter that I missed was Amir Albazi versus Brandon Moreno. And so we can take a few lessons from these fights that I incorrectly picked. Well, I think that something that you really need to think about when we're talking about if a fighter is going to be effective or not is the one huge lesson is the age of the fighter. And I'm not talking about age as a blanket statement. The older fighter is usually going to lose. In fact, because I was considering the amount of the age factor, I went through and I was thinking, if you pick the younger fighter in every single fight, what percentage would you be correct in? And it turns out the younger fighter actually only wins 53% of the time. And if you did pick the younger fighter in every single fight, you'd be down 7.3 units. So that is not a good way to predict who's going to win or not. Now, what age really is an indicator of is how much damage a fighter has accumulated throughout their career, and effectively how breakable that fighter is. Do they still have a good amount of durability? Are they going to be able to eat shots? Are they going to be able to keep up the pace with their younger opponent? Or have they started slowing down? Have they started giving bigger and bigger reactions to shots that they've been getting hit back onto them? So when we look at guys like Neil Magny versus Prates, Magny has really started to slow down. When we look at guys like Cannonier, who fought Imavov, and then he also fought Caio Baralho, Cannonier has started to slow down, and he started to accumulate a lot of damage. These younger guys simply can take bigger strikes than Cannonier can. That's a big reason why I picked against Adesanya in last weekend's fight card, because Adesanya had started to exhibit the beginning of slowing down and the beginning to become more susceptible to eating shots. And not only that he's slowing down and so he's eating more shots, but the shots he's eating are having a bigger impact on him than they were previously in his career. Another thing that we need to look at is cardio and grappling. And I think that this is some of the biggest keys to determining correctly who's going to win a fight. When Merab Dvalishvili can out-grapple Umar Nurmagomedov and he can out-grapple Sean O'Malley, that is a cardio and grappling advantage that is so vast it's hard for his opponents to overcome with any type of skills that they can throw back at him. They can have some of the best takedown defense in the world, but if they are not drilling the continuous use of that takedown defense for 25 minutes, they're going to lose the fight to Merab Dvalishvili. A lot of people thought that O'Malley could knock out Merab, but it just turns out that his striking advantage was not so great that it could make up for the grappling deficit that he exhibited. This is also something that we need to look at in terms of Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. Edwards has great striking, but his striking advantage was not so significant that he could keep Bilal Muhammad off of him. And Bilal Muhammad was able to push the pace and utilize his grappling to just get to Edwards and make contact with Edwards, essentially winning the fight as soon as he got contact with Edwards. That is something that we also needed to think about with the Tybura versus Tuivasa fight, which I incorrectly picked, and also the Rozenstruik versus Gaziev fight, and the Moreno versus Albazi fight, where in Tybura versus Tuivasa has exhibited a pattern of getting taken down and controlled by grapplers in the heavyweight division, whereas Rozenstruik versus Gaziev and also Albazi versus Moreno, those are both fights where the grappler lost. I chose the grappler was going to win, but when we go back and we actually take a look at some of their previous fights, the evidence that they were going to be effective with their grappling in these fights that I incorrectly picked them was simply not there. Amir Albazi did not have the takedown proficiency required to actually be able to out-grapple Moreno, and that's something that I misanalyzed when I was predicting the fight. Same with Rozenstruik versus Gaziev. Gaziev had a TKO in round 2 in his first fight in the UFC, and then was a favorite against Rozenstruik, when he never actually proved that he had the pace, he had the cardio, and he had the grappling to be able to take Rozenstruik down and control him on the ground there. Now, these fights that I highlighted in orange are fights that in retrospect, I would take back and predict the opposite based off of these factors that I was giving you: age, cardio, and grappling. However, there are also some fights that I do not regret picking the way that I did, and due to their skills that they had previously exhibited in their past fights, or just due to freak circumstances, I look at these fights and I would think, if there was to be an immediate rematch, who would I choose? And I would still choose the person that I chose before, even though they might have lost. So Moreno versus Royval. I do think that Moreno beat Royval in that fight, even though it was extremely close. If they were to fight again, I would still pick Moreno to beat Royval. Same with Nicolau versus Perez. I think that Nicolau is a more skilled fighter. The one caveat in that situation is that Perez simply has more power than Nicolau, and he has much greater durability than Nicolau. So going back, if they were to rematch, I might choose Perez, but I would still go with the skills over the power and durability. Tybura versus Spivak. Spivak got Tybura in an armbar, and you can say that Tybura is starting to slow down, and it was his age and slowness that allowed Spivak to get that armbar. But then again, I do think that Tybura simply has better skills than Spivak on the feet and on the ground. Moicano versus Saint Denis. I think that Moicano did an amazing job getting Saint Denis down in round 1 and welting up his eye with elbows from mount. However, even with that completely welted up eye, it's arguable that Saint Denis beat Moicano in round 2 on the feet and was going to beat him in round 3, 4, and 5, but the fight was stopped due to his eye being swollen. Royval versus Tyra was another extremely close fight where I would still choose the person who has the better all-encompassing game plan of Tyra to beat the scrappy fighter in Royval. That brings me to my next prediction criteria. Does a fighter have a game plan when they enter the fight, or are they just reacting to what their opponent's doing? 9 times out of 10, you always want to be the fighter that has the game plan. When I'm talking about Royval versus Tyra, Royval is extremely reactive to what his opponent is doing, to the point where he makes it difficult for his opponent no matter where his opponent takes the fight. But I would always choose a fighter who has a true game plan, such as Tatsuro Taira, who is able to strike on the feet and then transition into a grappling sequence where he will take the back, land ground and pound, and then eventually try to submit you. I think that if a fighter comes into a fight with a game plan, they are much more favored in a fight than their opponent is. We also need to look not only at the game plan, but the ability to have the fight take place where they want the fight to take place. Essentially, the ability to dictate where the fight takes place. This is similar to someone that comes in with a game plan, but it's more broad. It's more, does this person have skills in all areas of the game, and can they exploit their opponent's weaknesses? So when we talk about Curtis versus Allen 2, the striking is close on the feet, but Allen has the skills to take the fight to the ground. He has the skills to change where the fight is taking place if he's ever in an uncomfortable situation on the feet with Chris Curtis. When we take a look at Pereira versus Hill at UFC 300, Pereira doesn't really have that ability to take the fight to the ground, but neither does Hill, which makes me much more confident in Pereira's ability to knock out Hill. It's the same with Pantoja versus Urzek. On the feet, I would say they're similar. However, Pantoja has that extra level to his game of being able to take the fight to the ground. This is a big reason. This is a big help when you are trying to decide where the fight's going to take place, visualizing it mentally into your head, and then based off of that visualization, who is going to succeed where? What is the likelihood that the fight is going to take place in kickboxing range, in phone booth boxing range, in the clinch, or in grappling? And then, based off of those likelihoods, who's going to have the most success in each of those areas? So, for example, since this is a recent fight, Imavov versus Adesanya, I predicted was going to mostly take place in kickboxing range, however have some short flashes of phone booth boxing range and have some clinch scenarios. In the kickboxing range, I gave the slight edge to Adesanya, but I didn't think that he was going to be able to take over the fight that much, that Imavov couldn't make up that deficit from the phone booth boxing range and from the clinch range, where I thought Imavov would have the greater success. We also had to factor in the fact that Imavov had better wrestling than Adesanya and was more willing to go for takedowns on Adesanya, which did open up strikes. Even though none of the takedowns were successful, just the fact that he was willing to go for takedowns made it much more difficult for Adesanya to predict what Imavov was doing. And that's why it's so important to be a well-rounded fighter. I can go on about the theory of picking fights, analyzing the fighter's skills, and then thinking about how they're going to match up for a while. I've tried doing a new system for the last couple of weeks, writing out a bunch of different stats and then thinking about which fighter is better in which of these stats. I'm going to keep working on that, and if I have success, I'll come back later during the year to give an update on this. But for now, let's take a look at some other analysts and see how they're doing. There are a lot of UFC analysts on YouTube, and if I missed your favorite one, please write in the comment section down below who they are, and I'll get right on making a pick compilation for them. We can we can take a look at Lock of the Night, MMA Lock of the Night. He has a 64% win percentage, which is very good, and up 2.3 units in the year of 2024. This is a little bit unfair because I factored in these last 3 weeks of 2025. So my predictions are going to be a little bit more skewed. But if we take a look, I ended the year of 2024 with a 69% win rate, 13 misses, and 29 hits with a total of 42 picks. We can take a look at the betting analyst of Brian Petrie from the Anik and Florian podcast. He's hitting at a sub 50%, which is a very low hit rate when we're talking about picking UFC main events. He's down over 5 units, and that is not good. Kenny Florian is doing slightly better with a 52% win rate and down 1.3 units. We can take a look at the Weasel, who is also at a 52% win rate, down 4.38 units. GC from the Ariel Helwani podcast is at a 63% win rate, but is still down 1.55 units because he picks heavy favorites and does not hit on a lot of underdogs. We can also take a look at myself, which once again, I was up about 7 units I was up about 6 units and had a 69% win rate. Volkanovski, he picks on his show. He doesn't pick that many fights, only the big ones. He picked a total of 16 fights with a 62% win percentage and almost breaking even on the amount of units. MMA Guru had a great year with a 66% win rate and up 5.7 units. Great job for MMA Guru. Anthony Smith, I did not take a lot of data because he is very scattered and far between, but if you think that I should actually track Anthony Smith's predictions for the comedic effect, let me know. Michael Bisping once again falls into the camp of only picking popular fights, and because of that, he actually has a pretty good win percentage. 11 correct picks, 5 misses. That leaves him with a 68% win rate and up almost 1 unit, making him one of the better analysts who actually works for the UFC. MMA Fortune Teller is another YouTuber, and he is doing well. 66% win rate, up almost 2 units. Brendan Schaub is another person who I just don't know if it's worth my time and effort actually going through and getting all of his picks. However, the ones that I have found of him have been laughably bad. Picking Poirier to beat Islam and picking Cortez to beat Namajunas. Joe Pyfer has a MMA Picks podcast with Sean Brady, and their picks are really quite bad. Joe Pyfer is at a 52% win rate and down 2.5 units, and Sean Brady is at a 46% win rate, down almost 7 units. Do not take any advice from these people. Pick'em MMA is a great channel. I would recommend you go subscribe to him. He actually tied me for the year of 2024 with 13 misses and 29 hits. However, because of the nature of our hits, I did end up with more units than him. And you can see that he mostly goes for heavy favorites and has a total of 2.61 units compared to mine, which was at about 6 units. And we also need to take a look at the fact that I did factor in his picks for the 2025 year so far, having his total at 14 misses, 31 hits, compared to me of 32 hits and 13 misses. So he is a person I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm going neck and neck with him going into the year of 2025. Santino, he is a coach, I believe, and has a podcast where he makes picks, bad picks, 54%, and down almost 3.5 units. Ian Parker is a bet analyst for ESPN for MMA, and not a very good one. Not only does he skip picking a lot of fights that he deems too close to call, but even the ones that he does predict, he's not good at. 54% win rate, down almost 5 units. Left Lane MMA is a MMA picking YouTube show. Not a very good one either. 56% win rate, down 3 units. Adesanya, not good. Fight Realm. Fight Realm is another MMA YouTube picking show, and I think he is a good one. He hasn't really posted lately, which is a shame because he was clocking in at a 61% win rate, which is very impressive, almost breaking even with the picks that he makes. DFS is a very analytical show, and their numbers are slightly better than the majority of maybe the average of the people that I've been analyzing, but not very good. 55% win rate with a 4.69 drop in units. Paul Dogger Pass and Cody Dogger Pass are two guys that make picks every week. Paul is not the actual talent. He's like the co-host of the show. 53% win rate, down 3 units. Cody Dogger Pass is a 63% win rate and up 6.6 units. So Cody is actually quite legit. When we take a look at Brian Campbell from Morning Combat, he's actually not doing that bad. 70% win rate with a total of 8.88 units. Once again, extremely spotty prediction record in 2024. Luke Thomas is also not doing that bad. 61% win rate, down 2 units. Big John McCarthy gets a little bit spotty. John and Josh Thompson don't do official picks. However, they will wax poetic about whether you should bet on someone or not. So I wouldn't really trust them. They go flip-flop back and forth. John is at a 63% and up almost 1 unit. Josh Thompson is at a even 50%, down 4 units. Robert Whitaker is a guy that has said that he doesn't like doing picks, so I wouldn't really go to his show for picks. But for what it's worth, the picks that he did give in 2024 clocked in at 50% and is down 2.2 units. Data Guy is a guy who claims to use data, but at the end of all of his videos, he just makes a prediction off of his gut instinct. However, he's not doing too bad with a 62% win rate and minus 0.29 units. Nick Pete is a BT Sport analyst and does 52% win rate on his picks, down almost 4 units. Now, if we take a look at the favorites only, so in the year of 2024, 31 favorites won and 14 favorites missed, leading us with a 68% win rate. And you'd be up 1.7 units. So if you bet on every single favorite, you would be beating every single analyst except for myself and Pick'em MMA, who we actually had the same numbers. Of course, our total amount won is much higher than the favorites only. And once again, if we take a look at younger fighter only, then the numbers aren't as stark as the favorites only. With 53% of the time, the younger fighter wins, and you'd be down over 7 units. Now, we can take a look at the analyst totals. So, for the year of 2024, I ended up with a 69% win rate. Same with Pick'em MMA. I was up 8 units. Pick'em MMA was up 2.6 units. We can also take a look at Brian Campbell, who had a 68% win rate, almost up 8. Same with Michael Bisping. Guru and Fortune Teller also had really good years with 66% win rate. Guru, however, was picking a higher amount of underdogs and ended the year with 5.7 units. Cody Dogger Pass, his win rate suffered a bit, but because he lives true to his name, Dog or Pass, his amount of units won is very high. Luke Thomas was doing well, selectively picking. Big John was doing fairly decently. Volkanovski, not bad. Data Guy, not bad. Fight Realm, not bad. DFS, not bad. Left Lane MMA, not bad. And then from here, the 53%, the 54%, I don't think these people are really anything to write home about. You can flip a coin and have higher success rate than them. pretty consistently. This is just rating it by units 1. It was myself, and then and then MMA Guru. Although I think that Cody DOP is above MMA Guru, and I just didn't add him into here. Now, this is an interesting thing. We can take a look at the amount that each fighter was picked by the analyst. So, Ankalaev was picked 77% of the time by analysts. Duplessis versus Strickland was picked 59% of the time. Mavov was picked 64% of the time. Hermanson was only picked 17% of the time by 3 people correctly picked him. Topuria was only picked 15% of the time. I don't know. I don't even know if I trust that. Volkanovski, Topuria, fortune teller. I picked Topuria. Guru picked Topuria. Wow. Topuria was only picked 15% of the time to beat Alexander Volkanovski. Bernard Royval was only picked 0.11% of the time, so 11% of the time. Rosenstrike was picked a quarter correctly. O'Malley to beat Marlon Vera, he was picked 80% of the time, so that makes sense. Tybura was picked 31% of the time. Namajunas picked 87% of the time. She was a big favorite. Firo picked 41% of the time. That was pretty evenly split, so a lot of people won good money on her because I don't think that her odds matched the amount that the analyst picked her. Brennan Allen was picked over Curtis 75% of the time. Pereira was picked over Hale 65% of the time. Perez was picked over Nicolau 31% of the time. Pantoja was picked over Ursik 68%. Lewis was picked over Nascimento 76%. Murphy over Barboza was 58%. Islam over Poirier 78%. Imavov over Cannonier 43%. A lot of people picked Cannonier. Tyra over Perez 66%. Whitaker over Alaskarov 95%. Only one person picked Alaskarov, and that was left in MMA. Pereira knocking out Prohaska was picked at 70% of the time. Namajunas beating Tracy Cortez was at 83% of the time. Jandiroba picked 56% of the time. Bilal Muhammad was only picked 15% of the time. That was a huge upset. Nurmagomedov over Corey Sandhagen was picked 76%. Spivak over Tybura was picked 37%. Duplessis over Adesanya was picked at about 41%. Cannonier over Baraglio, or actually Baraglio should have won that, was picked 78% of the time. Brady over Burns was picked 73%. DeWallish Willie was only picked at a 21% rate by analysts, myself included. DeWallish Willie was very undercounted by analysts. Moicano beating St. Denis, only 12% of the analysts thought that Moicano would pull off that pick. Pereira versus Roundtree was picked at 90% of the time. Royval picked over Tyra was picked at 28% of the time. Hernandez beating Pereira, 61% people picked Hernandez. Topuria beating Holloway, 68% picked Topuria to beat Holloway. Moreno beating Albazi, 73% picked Moreno. Prontes over Neil Magny, 93%. One person picked Neil Magny to win. Now, there was only one person who had 100% of the people picking him, and that was Jones over Stipe Miocic. All 18 analysts that I chose thought that Jones would win. Piotr Jan, 87%. Pantoja over Asakura, 90%. And Buckley over Covington, 62%. So this was a very interesting amount that I looked at. And then you can take a look where the winner's odds, the higher up a winner's odds were, basically the bigger underdog they were, the less amount of analysts picked them. So that was a pretty interesting thing. And then you can take a look at some of the outliers. Winner pick rate, 15%. And who had the 15%? Topuria over Volkanovski. Well, that is everything that I have to report for you today. I guess we can get into a little bit of the prediction for Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to win, guys. I don't think that Sean Strickland has the level of kickboxing needed to keep Dricus off of him. Both guys are vulnerable to the stomach. Sean Strickland can land good teep kicks to Dricus' stomach, but Dricus can land really powerful kicks to Sean's legs, land powerful kicks to the body of Sean Strickland. Here is a great head kick that he lands on Strickland. Strickland doesn't have the best defense when things aren't coming straight at him, and Dricus is able to run at guys, take an angle, and then land hooks and body kicks to them, really hurting them. He just has so much more power than Strickland does, though he has that level of wrestling that he's able to go to over Sean Strickland. And I just don't see anything that Sean Strickland is going to be able to change to overcome this Dricus du Plessis who is surging. I'm going to have an official prediction of a round 3 knockout for Dricus du Plessis over Sean Strickland, and I hope to see you after the fact. Anyway, everyone, thank you for watching this video. This was a long one, but I wanted to share this project and spread the word. Let me know who you think I should add into this list, and if you think I should keep going with this list, because it has been fun, it has been validating, and I'm the best analyst on YouTube. Later.